Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by James Currier, Chief Revenue Officer of Finloc USA. Thanks for joining me, James.
Jesse, thanks for having me.
Nah, it's great to have you on here. As I was saying kind of before we started recording, shame on me. However, I think you're the second person outside of Hugh Swandell that I've actually interviewed that's located in Canada. So I guess I'll have to fix that trend there.
I do know a lot of Canadians, so anytime you want an introduction, just let me know.
All right, man. Sounds good. So, James, for people that might not have had the privilege of meeting you yet, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very unique career in my perspective, but certainly been interesting so far. And I don't think I'm anywhere close to done. So I'm currently with Finloc USA. I cover all of the US market and a lot of the Canadian market as well. Coming from a Canadian background and having worked in Canada most of my career, I maintain many relationships in Canada. And so I do enjoy some business here, but my main territory is covering the US for Finloc. And how I got here is, through sheer luck, I would think. So I started my career after university with a Xerox agency selling copiers in Vancouver, BC, Canada. And what I found was that I was always more interested in the finance side of selling copiers, not necessarily the technology of the equipment itself. So giving that a good hard look, the next stage in my career was into leasing for a small company in Vancouver. And then my wife and I moved back to Ontario. In 2015, I started with an equipment finance brokerage then, and have slowly but surely worked my way up into my position now through a series of small but incremental moves all in the equipment finance industry and leasing industry. So again, how I ended up here is through sheer luck. And I think a lot of people who work in equipment finance would count themselves very fortunate in the same fashion.
No, that's fantastic. And that's an interesting piece you said, where you were more interested in the finance side than the technology side. So you're definitely cut from the cloth that needs to be in this space. I still don't know where I still don't know where I fall on that line. I'm more of a, look at what it can do. Let them figure that out.
I just want the technology to work, and I want to talk about numbers and economics and finance. Don't ask me how to fix a computer.
Perfectly fair and understandable. So you're from Ontario, then you went to university on the West Coast, and then moved back?
Went to university in Ontario, attended university briefly in Vancouver, actually in Burnaby, just doing some community economic development work for my own personal interest. But predominantly education was Ontario based.
Got it. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough where, in my previous lives, I had the US and Canada for a territory. Unfortunately, I haven't been up to, I used to get to Toronto at least once a year, but I want to say it was 2019, because obviously from 2020 to majority of 2022, I don't think they don't like me going there anyways, let alone COVID. So
there wasn't a whole lot of travel over borders for a couple of years, understandably, but you are welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
I talked to Canadian Border Services.
This is online, so it must be true. So just remember that, people. So before you go into the Finloc introduction, real quick on that, the COVID and having US as a territory, what was that like? Because I've met you a couple times, and you're a very personable person. You have a large personality. So that's what really, I'm sure, what gets you a lot of your business and opportunities, and not being able to come down to the States. Like, how was that, James?
It did prove challenging for a couple of years, Jesse. I made it work, but not without challenge. And Ultimately it was a challenge for everyone, and the perseverance pays off eventually. So, Finloc has always had a place in the U.S. market. Certainly, we're advancing that growth and have been over the last couple of years, but COVID certainly put a damp cloth on that for a little while.
I remember it was like my first trip was actually in late 2020. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to go someplace. And it's like, you go to the airport, mask, on a plane, mask. And then when you go there, like half the restaurants are closed. You're like, okay, this sucks. Like maybe I don't.
There is some of that. I remember one of the first times traveling post COVID, where masks were still mandated. I forgot a mask, and they mandated that I purchase one first thing. No, there was a vending machine with a security guard standing at the entrance of the airport, and he said, "No, you must go buy a mask," and it was $20 for one of those little N95 masks. And I just
well, at least it was the N95 mask, and you didn't like spend like $20 on Amazon for prepackaged stuff that came in a Ziploc bag. Maybe that happened to me.
Yeah. I haven't done that one yet, and couldn't wait to get rid of the mask. So thankfully, I do travel a lot, even though I live in Ontario. I spend half of my time in the US, and so I am always on the road. And the not having the masks is okay by me.
It's fair. That's perfectly fair. It was like I just remember the line. I know I'm getting off track here, but we were flying to, I want to say, Virgin Islands. It was like our first like trip in March of 2021, and we got upgraded. And the lady's like, "You need to wear your mask." I'm like, "Well, what about when I'm drinking?" And she goes, "Well, no, I mean, not when you're drinking." I'm like, "Then that's your responsibility to make sure I always have a beverage in front of me."
Right.
Sometimes
as long
it
as
worked.
you were drinking
Sometimes
or
it worked.
eating,
Sometimes it didn't.
It didn't make sense to me. If you're drinking or eating, you could have your mask down. So as long as you have a bag of chips in front of you or a soda, you could not wear a mask.
Yeah, it seems reasonable. So just keep the Bloody Marys coming, and we'll have a fine flight.
Something like that.
All right. Yeah. So, do you mind just kind of introducing Finloc USA, James?
Absolutely. So Finloc, very simply put, we are specialists in trailer finance. We have an entire focus on the transportation sector within equipment finance. We've been around for 45 years. It's all we've ever done. And in my mind, it's probably all we will ever do, because we love trucking and transportation. It's a focus that we've always had, and we think we're pretty good at it. So it really lends to our experience helping our customers through some of these more difficult times, like the one we're going through right now, where we can talk to them directly about trucking, freight rates, brokering, all of the things that are important to our customers. We have absolute direct knowledge of that. Whereas with, most other lenders, they don't have that particular niche or specialty. We don't do aviation or construction equipment, restaurant equipment. We love trucking, and that's where we play. And so I live and breathe trucking and trailers, and that's all I do, and I love it.
Nope, that's fantastic, and there's nothing wrong with being a specialist. I mean, it's the unique thing about this industry is you have generalists, and then you have other people that are just found a niche, and they go and they maximize the niche because they understand the types of engines that are in some of these fleets, what are the chassis on some of these, what kind of, overall, because then the residuals better, and it allows you to do more creative things to structure deals to put owner operators in the right vehicles.
Well, and owner operators are a large part of what we do. The 1 to 5 trailer purchases, we see those every single day. And we do deal a lot with some of the smaller enterprise fleets, call it up to 250 power units.
Oh, wow.
That's, we see a lot of the 10 to 20 unit purchases. We typically don't go much above that. I mean, we from time to time we'll have a project where we will refinance a portion of a client's fleet for, call it a $5 to $7 million project for them. But typically not much above that. We know where our lane is, and we typically stick to it.
Nope, that's perfect. So, not to go back to, the COVID again, or the COVID situation again, but when that whole thing was presenting itself, I'm sure you're like, oh man, here we go again. And I think it was the complete opposite with the trucking industry, where it's like, no, now we need more. Now we're out of supply. Now we're going through this chip shortage. Now we're going through all these things. And you mind just kind of talking about like the last couple of years in the trucking industry, James?
It's a very appropriate point. I don't think anyone, if you had talked about what was going to happen for the next 2 years back in 2020, I don't think anyone could have predicted it, because a lot of industries, particularly the service industries, did suffer massively. But the trucking and transportation industry was gangbusters for 2.5 years, and there was nothing anybody could do to slow it down, really.
Sure.
We saw a lot of supply chain demand. We saw some challenges with supply chain, a lot of shortages, some of those shortages still being fulfilled today. And so we're still seeing the after effects or the lingering effects from those shortages now. And in our reality, we haven't slowed down at all over the last 3 years. It really has. It's been great. We are cautious of what might happen over the next couple of years. Certainly, if I were to try and predict, crystal ball broken and everything like that, but if I were trying to predict what's going to happen, I would, with a grain of salt, say that it's probably not going to be what 2021 was for trucking.
I mean, that's beyond fair, right? I mean, at some point it needs to normal out or level out.
Right.
As long as it's not like this massive 2006, 2009 scenario, then it's great for the industry.
Thankfully, I think from a finance and economics perspective, I'd like to think that we did learn a lot from what happened between 2006 and 2010, and particularly what happened in 2012-13. The economy certainly suffered then, and I think that the Fed has a much better grasp now on how to perform some of these disinflation measures that they're currently going through. I think at some point near the end of the podcast, you and I should have a bet as to whether the Fed raises rates again next week.
Yeah, because I guess by the time this airs in a couple of weeks, we'll be like, yeah.
Well, and it might be it would certainly prove valuable. So I'll take over.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's been, thanks for talking about that, because obviously it's on everyone's mind. And you have the fuel costs that are just continually just skyrocketing. And I live in Arizona, which feels like I live in California now. When you look at, like, I think the price of gas was cheaper in Chicago last week than it is out here now, and what is going on?
Fuel on the West Coast is outrageous right now. Thankfully, the fuel price year over year has come down slightly. I'm not sure enough to make a significant difference, but when you're running a trucking company, pennies matter, particularly pennies per mile. And I know that a lot of folks are struggling right now with the rates that we're getting on freight. The reality is that at $2.15 or $2.25, most carriers can't make a living off of that.
No.
And the large enterprise fleets running at an average cost of 205 can barely make a living doing that. They can keep wheels turning, but your profit margin is almost nothing at the current rates. So my anticipation is that at some point in the fall or late fall, I would think we'll start to see those rates come up.
No, and that's an interesting point, because it's like, if you have to drive so much just to break even, last thing you want to do is have a driver on the road who's already taxed mentally and then like not getting enough sleep. That's just a recipe for not good outcomes.
No, and the ones who suffer the most, as we all should know, are the owner operators. Typically the enterprise fleets can survive through these types of slight downturns until rates come back up, mainly because they have great contracts in place that are at typically higher rates. When the average rate comes down on spot markets, that's when these owner operators and small fleets start to suffer. We are seeing several owner operators go back to company driving positions, which was anticipated a year ago. And so, that does tend to happen in these economies. And, it's a natural progression. Everything that we do in trucking is very cyclical, not necessarily predictable as far as a timeline, but absolutely cyclical. And so, we would anticipate spot market rates coming back up at some point over the next couple of months.
Perfect. And a few months back, you introduced me to some people at the Toronto's Truckers Association. I say that correctly?
Toronto Trucking Association, yes.
Yeah, there we go. So do you mind just kind of talking about that association and, how are you affiliated with it?
Absolutely. So I sit on the board of the TTA, the Toronto Trucking Association, and have for the past couple of years. Tremendous group. We are actually celebrating our 60th anniversary this year, which is fantastic. Looking forward to getting together with that group. And it is comprised entirely of folks from trucking within Ontario. And it's an absolutely terrific group of people. A lot of carriers, some vendors, some finance people, a couple insurance folks, some tire people. It's diverse, but all within trucking, and allows me to keep a really good ear to the ground when talking everything trucking. And so we meet frequently and get a chance to break bread and talk about the industry as a whole and some of those macro issues.
Now, what are the requirements to get into that association? Like, can you be a service provider, or do you have to actually be like a lessor or a finance company?
As long as you are within trucking at some point in some field, then you can join. And I can't recall the name of the website URL off the top of my head. But if you Google Toronto Trucking Association, you can.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got to
be
careful. You can't really say TTA.com nowadays, because who knows what that might be.
In fact, I would suggest not putting in TTA.com. I don't know what that is, but
nope.
Maybe don't try it. At least not on a work computer.
No.
So we are predominantly education based as far as an organization. So we do provide a lot of education for our industry partners and our membership group. We've got other groups in Ontario and Canada who are predominantly lobbyists. We've got other groups that are predominantly social. And so we've got our space within trucking where we bring in folks from legislation, from the policing community, from insurance, finance, from carriers, and we provide education to our members. I would think live probably once a quarter or more, and certainly more often than that online.
Perfect. And did you say how many members you had?
I did not say because I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Okay, sorry.
No, not a problem.
All right.
We are what I would deem a top 5 transport industry association in Canada.
Perfect.
If that means anything to anybody.
I don't know what that means, but you never know. Maybe we'll find out some of these numbers before the time this airs. We can put that out there. But so I want to talk about your first kind of equipment finance industry event that you went to. Was it a CFLA event? Was it one of the North American events? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I actually do remember. It was a pub night event with the Toronto Trucking Club, the TTC, and or Toronto Transportation Club, and which is the social side of the of another association that is predominantly social. Phenomenal club, and I think the largest transport club in Canada, and has also affiliated with several other social clubs in the US now and throughout Canada. So my first event was one of those, and I think for the better part of a decade, I attended every single event that I could get my hands on and get approved. I'm a big relationship guy. I'm a very firm believer that relationships matter, and being able to call folks when it matters to get the right information at the right time is so important in our careers and our jobs and our lives, that it really is invaluable resource to be able to have those connections and those contacts that ultimately you end up being able to call your friends.
Sure, absolutely. And it's those relationships that get you through those periods of trials and tribulations.
And I've had a few of those as well.
Yeah.
Listen, you can't work in trucking, sales, equipment finance, and the like for as long as I have without having some trials and tribulations. That's predominantly why I'm bald.
Sure.
So,
and I can see why the going to some of these events. I mean, this is August makes my 18th year. Oh, yeah, 18th year in equipment finance. And
fantastic.
they're like addictive or like contagious. And you had a nail on the head where it's like, okay, how do I, as a sales professional, how do I position myself to make sure I'm at this event next year? And then what else is out there? And then because you meet one person, who knows where that relationship goes, right?
Well, I mean, you and I are a great example of this. We met in Chicago at an ELFA event, and then again in DC. And going forward, I could pick you out from a mile away in any airport.
Hopefully that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't worry. I stick out like a sore thumb, so you'll be able to pick me out too.
Nah.
No, so I mean that is how it happens, and it's an important part of who we are and what we do. I take great pride in not just providing a service to our clients and customers, but being able to provide consultations and industry experience and knowledge. It's a big part of who we are and what we do. I have to be able to provide some of this information, data, and knowledge and experience to my customers because they mandate it, they require it, and I don't take that lightly.
So James, what else is on the docket for the rest of 2023? When will I be seeing you again at a conference?
When are we going to run into each other again? I think off the top of my head, I will be in Phoenix for the ELFA annual conference. Very much looking forward to that. And then before that, we've got the CFLA, Canadian Finance and Lease Association, coming up in September in Quebec City. And other than that, my plan is to be in the US early and often, particularly starting in August, September. And I imagine that you and I will run into each other at some point fairly soon. If not before then, certainly you should come up to Toronto, attend one of our events at the TTA, bring the Equipment Finance Cares banner with you, and certainly you're welcome to come and talk to us anytime. Equipment Finance Cares is a terrific organization. You're doing a tremendous job. I do apologize, I won't be able to attend your golf tournament. I'll be away. But,
hey, we'll get you to something. We'll figure out something. It's like I need to talk to like the CFLA, because last year we had our event in Philadelphia in September, and I think the CFLA annual overlapped with that one. And then our golf tournament this year, was the same as our Maryland event. And then and what's funny is this year's event overlaps with the event that we're having in Chicago, and it's like, hey, come on,
you can't win.
Come on. But appreciate the kind words, and and you and Finloc's support of EF Cares, man. It's been a fun couple of years, and as far as Phoenix goes, let me know. Obviously, that's my backyard, so hopefully it's.
I've never
cooler.
been to Phoenix.
I'm assuming it's going to be cooler there, but if you want to come down and check out the crib, you're more than welcome to.
Hey, I appreciate the invitation, and I will certainly take you up on that.
Okay. Well, excellent, man. Well, James, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today and learning more about Finloc. I think from a synergistic perspective, you and I share a lot of commonalities in regards to our approach to business and how we treat people. So that's refreshing whenever you can hear other people's perspective. And I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Pleasure was all mine, Jesse. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, sir. You have a good day. Take care.
Thanks.